for a lot of clinics and a lot of practice owners that I talk with, they chase the new patient. That's fine. You've got to get new patients in the door. But where they really miss the gold mine in their practice is all the people that they've helped before. Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. My name is Thomas Schreiber. I'm the Director of Marketing here at StrataPT. StrataPT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. Recently, StrataPT was ranked the #1 EMR and billing system in outpatient therapy and rehab from KLAS Research. On today's episode, Paul Singh, the CEO of StrataPT, sits down with Neil Trickett, PT and CEO of Practice Promotions. The guys unpack what real marketing looks like for therapy practice owners and why most clinics get it wrong. They also dive into why just having a website isn't enough and how to actually convert visitors into new patients, how Neil would market a new brand in 2025 with no shortcuts, just the essentials, the simple exercise that reveals whether your practice is attracting the right audience, and lastly, why your Google business profile might be the most valuable marketing asset you have, and it's free. If you'd like to learn more about StrataPT and see how our EMR and billing works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode.
Talk to me like a second grader. Give me the 2-minute overview of Practice Promotions. What do you guys do? What do people know you for? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, so Practice Promotions, we're a marketing agency that specializes in helping PT and rehabilitation clinics to grow. And we've been in business now about 14 years. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I had a practice for 8 years in South Florida. So we're physical therapy led marketing agency, and that's why we niche in this area. And so we help clinics anywhere from like 3+ providers to our largest clients, 160 location provider in the Northeast. And so, the key thing there is that for clinics, it's difficult to have the voice of their clinic and the nuances of the physical therapy trade combined with all the technologies and the needs in today's, kind of modern online world to get known in the community. So you got to have kind of the balance of both where you can get found, how your website's going to get found, how you're using SEO, how you're using online, Google advertising, all the social media, all those kind of things, combined with the voice of your clinic and what patients are going to gravitate towards. And so we've been able to balance that really nicely and be able to help clinics really tell their stories from within the clinic and get known in the broader community and what's going to catch with people when it comes to taking care of their bodies and coming in for PT.
Yeah. So,
but you were right in when we were talking was that for a lot of clinics and a lot of practice owners that I talk with, they chase the new patient, right? And that's fine. You've got to get new patients in the door. But where they really miss the gold mine in their practice is all the people that they've helped before. And that is how most small businesses grow, is through their customers, right? The repeat customers. And, you either got recurring revenue or reoccurring revenue. And so for practices, we want reoccurring revenue where people would come back for care. And sometimes we just think in our mind, like, hey, they had a great experience. They loved us. They're going to come back if they need me.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that's not how things happen. Right? People get busy. They have other choices. And most people don't want to come back to PT unless they really have to. So they need some prodding. And that's where marketing comes into play. So for a lot of practices, if you shift your mindset and if you look at your processes for communicating to your customer list, whether it's a patient that was just in or a patient that was in 3 years ago, how are you maintaining your level of expertise with them and that thought process in their mind of being the experts? And that's where you've got to push out content, right? You got to market to them on a consistent basis.
What you just said there, I think, is super subtle, but really, really important. You talked about this idea of like they're chasing everybody, they're chasing new people and leaving all that reoccurring revenue or that other money on the table. Are there some rules of thumb when you're doing the napkin math of like, how much money are we talking about here? Like when you think about how much they're leaving on the table by solely focusing on new patients?
A lot. And so there's two key metrics here that you should be looking at from a marketing perspective in your practice. One is your patient acquisition cost. So what does it actually cost you to get someone in the door from your marketing, advertising, the the cost of, say, a marketing director, if you have one of those in your clinic, basically adding up all that expense and dividing it into the number of new patients you get per month, right? Super simple patient acquisition cost. And so you really want to bring that below 100. And if you're below 50, you're really crushing it. Now, the other important metric to look at is your patient lifetime value. And that's where this thought comes into play of how are you marketing to your past customer list? Because if that new patient comes in one time, and let's say they come in for, make it simple, 10 visits at $100 a visit, right? That's $1,000 value of a patient coming in. Now, if that patient never comes back in again, you made $1,000 and it cost you maybe $100 to get them in. But if you continue to market to that past patient and they send a friend or family member, or they come back in for care, now they come in for a second cycle of care, and let's say that's another 10 visits, $100 a visit, $1,000. Now you made $2,000 off of that patient. That email marketing, text marketing, maybe some direct mail marketing, whatever you may be doing to your customer list, the cost of that is super low. And so your cost for that total patient acquisition comes down even further. But the main thing that you're trying to drive up is the patient lifetime value. I was actually doing a podcast today, and I was interviewing a physical therapist that has a 2-location practice in the Northeast, and he started up a stretch program, right? And so he's looking at cash added services into his practice where that increases the lifetime value of the patient, right? Because they come in for their PT care, but what do we do afterwards? Are we taking care of their well-being into the future? And what kind of membership programs do we have to offer them where they continue to work on their health and they pay us for doing it? So now your lifetime value definitely increases for that. So those are the two metrics to really look at: is patient acquisition cost and your customer lifetime value.
The thing I love about this, by the way, is that and there's a compliment buried in what I'm about to say. It's just not going to sound that way. The thing I love about this is that it's not innovative. It's literally how every other industry operates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, there's a compliment meant in there, right? Because it's like, I think I told you in the pre-show, I'm not from healthcare, but whether you're buying socks from Bombas or glasses from Warby or whatever, these tactics are the same. I mean, I can tell you that even the numbers you just mentioned, right? They're very similar to what we think about in the e-commerce world. I was just talking to one of our other portfolio companies this morning. It's one of these well-known e-commerce companies. Their cost of acquisition is like $33 to get a customer in the door the first time. And the lifetime value of that customer over the course of the next 3 years is something like $4,000.
Yeah.
And so they can't afford not to market to that. It's, and so
right.
I see a local PT here in Virginia. I've trained for a lot of marathons, and so statistically, I do something dumb 2 or 3 times a year. And the bad joke is I don't talk about what I do with him, so he has no idea what I do and what company I'm with or whatever. And so I made a comment to him the other day. I said, "How come you never send me like a magnet?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, like, "Hey, listen, this guy sold my house like 5 years ago. Still sends me like every quarter. Like no, he's never missed a quarter. There's a magnet with the local high school football games and this guy's face on the side of my fridge. I mean, it's there. It's like it'd be weird not to have it on my fridge." And I was like, last time I worked with the guy was 5 years ago, and I don't plan to sell my house for probably another 5 or 10 years. And
Yeah.
I was like, "You send me nothing." And he was like, "I don't get it, Paul." And I was like, "How much do you think I'm worth to you?" And I think he thought I was interrogating him. Anyway, the interesting part is he didn't really know. I mean, he's the owner of this small little practice.
Yeah.
And so I did the math. I was like, "Hey man, look, I like pulled up my Aetna EOBs. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm not a genius, man, but every time I get hurt, I see you about 6, 7 times. We're direct access in Virginia, right? So So I'm like, I can see right here, they're paying you about $110. My copay is like $20. So let's call it 130, 6 visits each time, twice a year. Like I'm probably worth $1,200-$1,300 for you." But he said, "But Paul, you always come back." And I was like, "Yeah, only because my kid's school is across the street."
Mm-hmm.
And when that changes, you're going to lose me. Like, what's your plan on that? And he's like, I don't have time. Like it's almost as if they don't even know. All I'm saying is like, I just think it's really interesting. The way you put it is so accessible. It's like basic math, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty cool.
In physical therapy world, right? We're in an evolution, and we've come from if you think back, like when I started in 1998, right? I had my practice through the 2000s until like 2010. So, during that time, heavily medical model, right?
Yep. Yep.
That has evolved, and we're now, we have the benefit, we have the opportunity of being in the medical world and the health and wellness world. And the clinics that I see that are thriving and growing and doing fantastic are the ones that are really bridging that gap where they are expanding into the health and wellness side. If we look at, they're I forgot what stats were coming out, but basically by 2030, right, in the next 5 years, the health and wellness economy is going to be $3 trillion that the public is spending towards it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are we taking advantage of that as a profession? And if we continue to, stick within just purely the medical model, being under the thumb of insurance companies and all the headaches that come with that, and we see where that's going, there's not much of a bright future there, right?
Yeah.
But we can still be in that medical world, right? And the relationships with doctors and surgeons and all that is needed. But then how do we take that patient further in the health and wellness space so that they have a full, complete transition from, hey, they had a chronic problem, they got into this, they have, let's say, for example, arthritis, they needed a total knee replacement, they came to therapy afterwards for that. But they want to get back into becoming better, healthier, and feeling better, being able to be more active so they don't have those chronic problems anymore. Where are we taking them from there? And that's why we have a lot of opportunities within the clinic to add those extra services to increase that customer lifetime value. You need marketing in order to be able to do that, and internal processes. So it is a bit of a pivot point, a change where we are in the profession, but we have that opportunity, that benefit.
I wanted to ask a question about that, but I feel like I'll take us down a rabbit hole. Let me maybe kind of switch gears here a little bit. So somebody's listening to this somewhere in the US or watching this on YouTube or wherever they are right now, right? So they're let's say they're nodding, they're agreeing. They're like, all right, yeah, Neil, I got this. I know this is a more complicated question than we can possibly cover in a show, but just at a high level, what does marketing look like for a practice owner? So let's just use the example you just talked. You said you were talking to somebody today that has 2 practices up in the Northeast, and they're adding this wellness program. Let's assume they're doing no marketing right now.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Is it a weekly newsletter? Is it a podcast? Is it text messages? What does it look like? How do you think about that?
Yeah. So, I broke this down, actually wrote a book on it, and we'll give an opportunity for our listeners at the end to be able to get that for free. But the key thing here is there's so many tactics that you can do when it comes to marketing that it can be very confusing. And that's where we get into trouble. We chase the shiny object. We think that this is going to be the solution to getting me all the new patients I could ever want. And that's never the case with marketing, right? Marketing, you first have to plan it out. You have to have a strategy, right? Like, what am I trying to accomplish here? And how does that fit in with my organization? And then what are the mechanisms or the vehicles that I can use or have help with to achieve those things? It's just like anything else, right? If you just go for it, you're going to fall on your face at some point. So First off, I would say you need to have a very strong online presence, right? That's how most people are finding services in today's world. So you need to maximize your online discoverability. And that comes from having a very good website. Like, your website is still a key part of how you are presented online. But then you need help with how you're leveraging that website. And then also things like your Google business profile, your different online profiles, like through Apple or Bing places, to help you rank better. And now we have more in this last year or two, which is, how are we showing up in ChatGPT? How are we showing up in what's called answer engine optimization, which is that top AI part of Google? And those are actually pulling from how clinics are ranking very high in Google, right? And the content that they have within their website. So you need to be able to produce content that's relevant to your audience, that you can have in blogs and on different pages of your website. So first off is really just thinking about, okay, how can I be more discovered in my area, right? How can I be ranking better in Google? You might need to look at some things for that. Once you are better found in Google, like that's your first place to start, then you can look at, okay, I'm getting people to look at my Google profile, look at my reviews. What do my pictures look like? What do my videos look like of my clinic and my treatments? I want to present that up on my Google profiles. I want to have a lot of that within my website because people really connect with what they see as real. So you got to have great, pictures and videography within your clinic. And then as they're coming in and they're looking at all these different pieces of information, they're looking at the reviews, they look at how close are you, they're looking at what kind of insurance you are. They go to your website and start to really poke around and learn like what can you do for them. So do you have specific pages that are really talking to them about their knee problem or their back problem? And so I call this prospect to patient conversion because what happens is you can get found quite a lot online and you might get, say, 1,000 people coming to your website. Now, traditionally, what you find is about 2% of those people will actually make an appointment, which is a pretty tiny number. But if you can squeak that number up by an extra 2%, you've doubled your number of new patients coming from your website. So how your website is structured, how it speaks to people, right? The messaging, the way that it's laid out. Some things that we do actually is to use AI with our designers, and it actually mimics how people's eyes track within the website. So you can lay out buttons and colors and it'll tell you how people are going to react to that. And the goal there is to get people to be sticky and stick within your website, digest your information, really get to know you. And that's when they're going to take, the action to make an appointment. So that's getting people to convert more on your website, and that can make a substantial increase in the amount of people coming into your clinic.
By the way, you got me thinking right away is when you started talking about percentages, because again, this is exactly how every other industry thinks. When you pick your favorite, and you know this already, but just for the audience's knowledge, pick your favorite e-commerce company, and they don't think in terms of sales per day. They're thinking in percentages. Okay, if I get this many eyeballs, I will get this many percent of them will convert to whatever. Even Amazon, there's this conversation with one of their designers about their product or whatever. And somebody said, somebody asked a snarky question of like, why do you guys focus so much on site speed? And this designer, this product owner or product manager at Amazon calmly responds right back in this public call and says, we know that for every 100 milliseconds slower the website is, we will lose 0.1% of the sales that are supposed to be coming from that page.
Yeah.
The point here fundamentally is you brought up this point of percentages. I think it's a really smart way to think about it. And it's correct. I mean, I think is also it's really about like what customers you kind of serve as well. Like I don't feel old. I'm 44, but the way I schedule an appointment now, whether it's for my kids' haircut or for my kids' barber, braces or whatever. Like if there's not an online scheduling, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. We want convenience, right? And that you gotta meet your customers where they're at, right?
That's the key right there. Yeah.
You gotta have the convenience for it. So, and I see it time and time again where practice owners, they fall in love with the look of their website. So they have this pretty website, but they have no idea how well it's working. Right.
If it doesn't convert. Yeah.
That's right. And then we're like, I don't have enough new patients.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah. So you need things like, so one thing that we push really hard is data and clarity, right? So our mission is to provide marketing clarity, and that helps our team make better decisions and also helps practice owner make better decisions. And one of those things is like, how well are you tracking how patients come into your business, right? Most people just say, hey, at my front desk, ask them how they heard about us, and they note it down on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That person may have seen an advertisement for you. They may have heard from their neighbor. They may have talked to their doctor. Their doctor gave them a list. They looked you up on Google, and now they're coming in and they're like, oh, well, my doctor said something about you, right? But that's not really how they got to you. A question, if you're still doing that, a good question is ask, how did you first hear about us? Because that will take the patient back to thinking of when they're, but ideally what you need to have call tracking software, right? You need to have form tracking software on your website. That's where the online forms and appointments were coming in, chatbots, all these kind of things. Like you can have a lot of data. Once you have the data of like how patients are actually coming in, then you can say, this channel's doing really well, or I'm getting a lot of people come in, but they're not necessarily coming in off of my website. Let me see where I can improve things. And then that's where you can make improvements in your marketing to get better results.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, you and I just met today, right? But I can't stress enough. Like this is great. I mean, it just confirms the fact that like I've always, and I probably sound snarky and sarcastic when I say this, but it's coming from a good place. I feel like if more practice owners would recognize that their business truly isn't all that different than any other existing business,
Yeah.
they'd probably be better off for it. They'd probably
Mhm.
run them more profitably. They'd probably spit off a lot more cash. But instead, they sort of like operate with one or both hands behind their back. I know I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but it's almost as if there's this belief that if you just lease the space, buy the van, put the shingle up, people will come show up.
I've done that. That's how I first started. I
Yeah,
had
that's right.
great PT. I had no idea what I was doing in business. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's how a lot of us get into it, you know?
I think the thing is like you touched on something there that I think is really that I if you're open to it, I'd love to kind of like pull the covers back on a little bit more. You started talking about this idea of like you were starting to talk about attribution and where did they first hear about you? And you mentioned just as an example, you said maybe they saw you, some doctor mentioned your name or some referral. Like you were essentially going towards like a referral. Whether or not somebody listening to this is in a direct access state, like what are your thoughts on that? Like actually, let me rephrase the question. Let's pretend let's pretend that you and I actually, let's just use the example you just gave. You just explained that when you started your first practice, you kind of set up the shingle and you're waiting for customers. If you had to do it all over today, go back to being like, you know, younger Neil, no
Mhm.
business experience, but knowing what you know today, and you can't cheat. You can't say like I have a whole bunch of money now and now I could like market it different. What would be like your like one page, like how would you start it today? What would like the marketing for Neil's practice be in 2025 if you had to start over today with what you know?
I would definitely have the knowledge first that marketing is one of those components of your business that is first and foremost. Like if you can't get people in the door, how are you going to treat them? Right. And how do you keep getting them back in for business there? So, sometimes we think too, like where I see clinics get into trouble is they don't really have a game plan from the beginning. They're kind of winging it. That's a recipe for getting stuck down the road. And one of those components is that you do need to plan for a ramp up period with your marketing. Because if you're starting brand new, you're not known in the area at all. You have to build a name for yourself. And that takes money and that takes time. So it's not something where, hey, you're going to put up a website and then all of a sudden within a week, you're going to be busy. That's not how it works, right? It takes a little bit of runway for this thing to happen. So just going into it, knowing that whatever changes I make, it's like a big flywheel. I got to put some energy, some push into that.
Yep.
And then it
Yep.
starts to spin up and the momentum gets better and better, but it's not going to produce a huge amount of results right at the beginning. But I would work really hard to build my online presence first. And I even see this with big practices. It's really fascinating, but people don't put enough effort into showing what their business and service is like.
Mm-hmm.
And people connect with pictures and videos. And we've got
Right.
so much power in the palm of our hand today with a phone. It doesn't take that much effort to go and take some decent shots of therapists working with patients or how the facility looks and what the experience is going to be like coming in. So we can do a heck of a lot with that first to use within our social media, to use
Mm-hmm.
within the website. So I would just do that. And you can even hire a professional photographer for pretty inexpensive today, $300-400 for a good session and have enough marketing ammunition for a whole year to work with. Right.
Yeah.
So I would say like just spend some time really investing in being able to show what it's like coming in for care. That's easy to put up on your Google business profile.
Yeah.
I would say like secondly, in that kind of online discoverability part would be just spending some time on my Google business profile. It's doesn't cost you anything. And it's where a lot of your local SEO is going to come from, how people find you locally in maps and as well as in their searches. And so from Google Business Profile, again, have awesome pictures right up there at the top. Like that's going to tell the story. You work hard on starting to get reviews best you can, right? To build that up. You want to make sure that you have your question and answer filled out in the Google Business Profile. Also categories, like that's a key area that a lot of people just put physical therapy clinic and that's it. But you might be delivering sports medicine, massage, all kinds of just different things that you can actually add in as categories. That just means you show up for more searches online, right? And then of course, making sure that you don't have to necessarily post a lot on social media, at least set up your profiles really nicely for Facebook, for Instagram, connect those in your Google business profile. So yeah, you can do a lot there without having to spend a lot of money to get a good presence online.
I think you would agree with this. I think like the what you're talking about there, um, one little nuance I think you'll agree with me on this. You don't have to, but I think you will. The one little nuance I would add on that is that like ultimately, if you know who your customer is and you kind of know where their eyeballs are already going, you can really take what you just said and really narrow it down. So I'm going to use like a really basic example, and I'll probably get in trouble for it, but like if your audience is 75-year-old double knee replacement, patients, you probably don't need a TikTok account.
Right. Right.
On the flip side, you're going after, 44-year-old wannabe runners or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I don't see you on Instagram or whatever, I'm probably not, going to pay attention to you. So it does that's a little nuance, by the way, because otherwise you could just boil the ocean. You could do all these things, but if you're not where your customer's eyeballs are already going.
Yeah. It depends where you are too in the country, right? So different flavors. And we work with clinics pretty much every 50 states, plus a lot in Canada, right? So it's very interesting to see how you have to adjust marketing depending on where people are. And like, here's a great example. So we started out in print marketing. Like that's where we started out back in 2011, and a lot of patient newsletters. So sending newsletters out for practices that we design and print mail for them out to their customer list. And so I always remember this one. I thought it was hilarious. Is that this clinic in Arkansas, right? And we would design for them a really nice newsletter, tell about stories from the clinic, give tips and advice and things like that. And we put like a recipe or something like that in for a smoothie or something healthy. And, they did okay. They did pretty good. But then, one of their people that we were working with there, they're like, hey, can you put this recipe in there? We think, it's like Halloween or something. And so it's like this, it's just like a really unhealthy pie or something there.
Right.
And it killed it. Right. I'm like, man, okay. So then they did it again the next month, and they put a different kind of recipe. And I'm like, hey, this is like Paula Deen country, and everything's butter. And that was like, they just wanted good recipes in their newsletter. So you have to be, like you said, tailored to your audience, know who you're talking to. Something that's going to work, say, in Atlanta, right, is going to be very different than it works in, Alabama or Nevada or somewhere.
That's
like
right.
That, right.
Yeah.
So you got to like know your audience and how you want to present what you have within the clinic.
Yeah. By the way, I want to be respectful of your time. A quick story on this. In one of my other hats that I wear, I do a lot of investing in tech startups. And in my office, usually I'm working from home, but in my office there, one of the conference rooms actually has a glass a mirror, one-way mirror on it. Because I find that with a lot of business owners, and I think I can say broadly that this is true of every business owner, they typically don't realize that their customer is not exactly like them. So what I mean by this is that it's not like pretty often I will meet like a business owner that truly believes they understand the customer. And when I need to make a point, what we'll do typically is we won't tell them what we're doing. We'll actually call a meeting in that office. And I know this is going to make me sound horrible, but there's a point to this. Typically call a meeting, just a normal check-in, but instead of it being virtual, hey, I'm going to be at the office. Why don't you come meet me at the office? At the same time, our office manager will typically run down to it's in one of these like town centers. As you know, in Virginia, there's a bunch of these town centers, right? So there's like people walking up and down the street, and, we'll sit out there and we'll be like, hey, here's a $50 Starbucks card. If you'll come hang out for 15 minutes, look at a website or look at a menu or look at a product, tell us what you think about it. And what they don't realize, or what the founder or owner won't realize, is that that person and I are typically meeting in a area like a conference room that's adjacent to this, but they don't realize it's a one-way mirror that they're looking into. They just think it's a glass window that they're looking past. And typically the way I've been doing this for like 20 years. So we got a whole method to this thing where I'll be like, so tell me what you think about your practice. What do you think about your business? What do you think about this? What do you think customers say about it? And then they'll say X, Y, and Z. I'll say, interestingly enough, those people right there, they've been given, like, we invest in everything from restaurants to tech startups, right? So typically I'll then just say, actually, what's interesting is those people right there are actually looking at your product right now. Let's go ahead and turn on the camera or turn on the mic so we can hear what they're saying. And what they're being coaxed into doing on the other side of that window is it'll be somebody from my staff that's walking them through and just saying, hey, we're doing a focus group on this particular product or this particular thing. Can you just walk me through what are your thoughts as you walk through the website? Or what are your thoughts as you look at this menu or what does this make you feel? And when they don't realize they're talking to the owner, like usually when somebody's talking to the owner, they're usually pretty respectful. Oh, I think it's such a great thing, whatever. But then I was just doing this with somebody. We had invested in a taco truck of all things, a chain of taco trucks. And the owner's like, oh man, like our menus are the best, blah, 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 right? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, obviously I like it. I've already invested. I like you. And so I turn on the mic and you could hear people. So then, our staff's like, so what do you think of this menu? And like the first thing this person says, like, they want to charge me like $18 for this taco, like, but they couldn't afford nice paper. Like we had literally pulled the menus from the locations, right? And they're like $18, but like crappy paper. I mean, where else are they cutting corners? And it's those little things where it's like, anyway, the point is, it kind of, when you were talking about that story about like somebody wanted to throw in their menu and stuff, it's just a weird relationship.
Well, that's a great point because, one of the things, again, I got to go into the book is how can you attract higher reimbursing patients, right? And so we all, as practice owners, I want to have a higher reimbursing patients. I want to take the best insurance, even cash pay patients. Like, how can I increase my revenue per visit kind of thing, right? Well, people with better insurance are typically going to be a little bit more affluent. And how are you presenting yourself to them? They're going to have a choice online. What does your website look like? How's it speaking to them? Are you calling that? How's the experience when they come into your practice? Is it a premium type experience, right? The way that they come in, the way that they're greeted, the way that their therapy is delivered, the way that your practice looks. I mean, it's that whole focus group. I always did an exercise myself in the practice. I would go outside. Okay, I'm going to put my patient hat on. I'm just going to be a patient. I'm just going to walk in. And how would I perceive this place being a patient, right? And just kind of walk around. It's a great exercise to do because sometimes you go, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's the way that looked. Or I didn't realize that the waiting room was a little bit messier than I thought it was, right? Like all these little things. Yeah. But if you're trying to attract a more premium insurance type patient or even cash pay patients, you've got to raise the bar in the way that you look, the way that you come across. That's a great story that you had.
As we start to kind of wrap, let's talk about the book for a minute. We'll put a link to it and all that stuff, but give me the overview on the book. You sort of alluded to it already.
Yeah. So I basically pulled the strategies that we've done for years with clinics and working with like the top 10% of clinics that we work with, like what did they do really well, right? And I boiled it down to key areas. And so in the book, we cover 3 corners, which is market to grow, which is how I get new business, right? And repeat business, and then market to hire. So how are we using marketing to attract top talent in today's very competitive marketplace? And then how do we use marketing to profit? Mm-hmm. So I cover those 3 core areas within the book.
That's cool. But where can people get the book?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do, you can get the physical book. You just go to markettogrownet, and that's the number 2. You can get it there. We'll ship that out with the book and a kit there. If you want to get the ebook version, you can go right on Amazon and get it from there too.
That's cool. That's awesome. Well, Neil, this is pretty awesome. How we'll have to get you back on here too. What's the best place for people to reach out to you? Email, LinkedIn? What do you prefer?
Yeah, I'm all over the place. LinkedIn's a great place to connect with me. And then our practicepromotions.net website has tons of resources for practice owners, downloads, things that you can do to improve the marketing in your business. So you can actually order the book through the website too.
That's awesome.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. StrataPT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. If you'd like to learn more about StrataPT and see how our EMR and billing services work, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.